So, as always, I'm going to begin this process with a prayer. You know, this could take the place of morning worship. This could take the place of your spiritual something that you've been looking for. For me, it's all about fusing together my desire, my personal desire, and my immediate desire, and then the want of what I want outside in my life to happen. And I think that there is a very big connection between what we think and what we express in our lives. So prayer to me is more about inviting greater, deeper thought. It's about inviting an expression that is not just for me, for my world, but something even greater than my world. So I use the template of the Lord's Prayer, what Jesus taught us to pray, but I do it in my own words and with my own spiritual thoughts and ideas. Basically, we all are come from the same thought of God, the same oneness of God. And as we move from that oneness of God, we experience a unified oneness. I mean, we're all thinking at the same time, but I'm thinking from my perspective. I see everything in my life, and I can change what my perspective is, but I can't change what your perspective is. You have to change your perspective. And we're all part of that same mind of God. And so it's almost as if when God created Adam in the image of itself, or Spirit created Adam in the image of itself, objectified itself, and then said, you know, you could name everything in the world. You could name all of the beasts. You could name the mountains. You could create all that you want. It's all yours. And Adam basically said, you know, this is good, but it doesn't satisfy me. I want somebody like me to communicate with. The same reason that I believe Spirit created man, because it wanted somebody objectively, something objectively to communicate with it, to love it, to enjoy it, to want to be there without its subjectivity. Like, you don't want to, you can train a dog to want to be with you and love you, but maybe it'd be better if we use something like a robot, you know, or your coffee machine works for you because you paid for it and you put the coffee in and it comes back out. We don't want a robot loving us. We want something who chooses to love us. So when Adam decided to do that, when Adam decided to choose that it wanted something more than itself, the Bible says in the scriptures of both the Judaic scriptures and the Christian scriptures that God put Adam asleep and took a rib out of his side. In my mind, to create Eve, in my mind, God never woke Adam back up. That we're still in that original dream. And in that dream, Adam had to discover, and Eve had to discover what it was the full spectrum of good and evil, the full polarization of good and evil, to really respect and know what it wanted to come back to God as complete truth. So it's almost as if we're living through this dream of the first Adam. And because it ate of the tree of good and evil, it created a sense that there was love, and then there was hate. There was health, and then there was death. And before that, there wasn't such thing. So as the years have gone on, as the woman created more of itself, the first thing that happened was, its first children, one killed the other. What manifested very quickly was the difference between good and evil. So what needed to happen was we needed to walk through the aisles like the prodigal son of all the negativity, all the evil that we could choose, and then come out on the other side choosing love. While that was happening, before Jesus, in my estimation, there needed to be a way to forgive man of his sins. So God created for man a way of sacrificing the sacrificial lamb. And the high priest would once a year put all the sins on this poor little lamb and sacrifice it. And in the mind of that primal man, that was good enough to release its own sins. And it needed to do that because we can't walk around with our own sins all the time, otherwise we'll end up being sick and dead. So around the time of Christ, Jesus, there was the sensation that we needed to have our own spirit to forgive ourselves. That we didn't need a sacrificial lamb, that we needed, every year, we needed one sacrificial lamb. And that sacrificial lamb, either you believe it metaphorically or you believe it that it happened actually. I believe that it actually happened, that sacrificial lamb died and then brought back its spirit to man. This, again, is all in the dream of God. But as Jesus taught us to pray, he taught us to pray, our Father. So he wanted us to believe that there was God and there was man, and in the middle was there this Jesus character, and that we could come to God with Jesus. We could come to God expressing our prayer with Jesus, who always would forgive our sins. He was the doorway to righteousness, to goodness. So in this prayer, what I want to do is I want to modify it and bring it to life with our ideas of spirituality. So let's say that consciousness, God consciousness, is that Father that we're looking at. So I say our God consciousness. Soften the ground within me. Soften the ground not only in my soul, not only in my physical being, but in my mind, where my imagination and all of my thoughts and my consciousness create my exterior being. Soften that ground so that more of you, more of goodness, more of love for self, more of love for others, more of compassion for self could abide. So then take my gifts, the gifts that I bring to the world, and think about the gifts that you have, the special things that you offer to the world, and ask Spirit what you can do to use those gifts to help the world, to help yourself, to help your family. All of that is part of the human existence. It's part of the human trip that we're on. Then I say, empower me or strengthen me to create what it is I need to create with these gifts to make the world better. And then this, I think, to me has been the most important thing that I've been praying for is to untie the tangled knots from my past. I think we all spend probably the majority of our life in our minds thinking about the things we could have done better, thinking about the things we failed at, maybe hopefully dreaming better. But the tangled knots that are inside of us are those places where we can't seem to unhook from. And to me, that seems to be the biggest prayer for me. That's what evil is for me. That's what brings my density of being down into a lower vibration. I want to untangle those threads of the past so that I can be untethered from the past, from the negativity. And it can be anything. So that's the next part. And then we kind of culminate with, like, protect us from the negativities in the world. And to me, I think our only negativities really are our mortal mind. And our mortal mind is everything that it's expressing outside of us. If we look expressly at outside of us to see what and who we are, we're always going to be disappointed. Our vision needs to be from a spiritual perspective, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And then we end this prayer with, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, now and forever. That is the essence of harmony, the unity that we're all looking for, to wake up from Adam's dream and live a life that's fully enriched and committed to loving and loving only. I say, ask yourself this question all day long. What would love do? And do it. And if you find yourself in the middle of, well, I don't know if I can do it, then you need to start rethinking what it is that you're about. What's most important in your life? So today, if there's anybody watching that wants to ask a question on Facebook Live, you can go ahead and ask it, type it in. I can see the questions. We can go ahead and always answer them from this point of view. And anyone who is on Zoom, you also can ask a question. And if you are on Facebook Live and your microphone is on, know that everybody can hear what's going on in your room. So you might want to turn it off until you decide you want to speak, or if you want to speak. You could either speak out loud, or you could write me a message on the text tools, and I'll be happy to answer those questions. So today, I want to start with reading something that I wrote this morning. The spanning of the bridge between desire, thinking of, and our desire thinking from is the most important aspect that we can change in our minds. Everything that we see outside of us has begun in as a thought, as an idea. Nothing outside of us expresses without first having thought of it, first having dreamed of it. So we want to think of, but when we think of, we also need to realize that sometimes when we're thinking of, we think negative things. Or we're not seeing it completely or fully. So what I've been learning is that thinking of something is not as powerful as thinking from something. For instance, say for instance, I'm thinking about prosperity. Everybody probably feels like prosperity is something that they could manage or have a lot more of. Even my wealthiest clients are always thinking about how their next investment. So when you think of prosperity, you think of what you would like and how you would like to achieve it. That is a great way to consistently think about what you want in your life and how you might get it. But a better way is to imagine that it already happened. And what would you be like, or what would you be thinking if you were seeing from the doorway or from a window into a life where you've already had or achieved what you wished? This is the key to the strongest mental thinking. And when we have mental thinking and when we are trying to create in our life, we have to go beyond reason. We have to go beyond idea and have to come to our strongest beliefs. And all of that happens in our mind. You might ask me, so how do you get rid of negative thinking? Well, let's take a good example. Say, for instance, and I'll just use my life for instance. I want to see myself as a successful author, someone who has sold a lot of books. Well, in my life, I've written 14 books. Some would consider that success, just writing them. For me, I've always thought success was millions of people reading my books. The closest I think I've ever gotten to that was like 40th on the New York Times bestseller list. And I don't know how many books that was, 1,500 or something like that. So I've always been on the pathway of looking toward what fame would be, or what people reading what I believe is the gift from spirit to the world. So I want that to happen. I mean, I didn't create 14 books for myself. I created it for the world. I thought I was giving a gift of my own being, creative source, and I was giving it to the world. But if nobody reads those books, what good is it, right? So what I realized is I was looking at my success from the point of being of it's out there. I think I always have, and I wonder in my perspective as a human being, if I have thought I wasn't good enough, if my writing wasn't good enough, if me as a person wasn't good enough, if I didn't live up to the ideals of my spirituality, would I not deserve to have prosperity? And I think I've reached a modicum of this. I've reached a healthy, loving life. I have love in my life. I have success in my life. I have artistic talent that keeps being expressed. I've been doing commercials, living a good life, in other words. But I think that there's a part of me that still doesn't think I'm good enough. So I've been wondering about this. I wrote this morning, this reason could never do, because we must move mentally from thinking of the end of thinking. Oh gosh, I should have I should have reread this before I did it. Duality is the human condition of life. Everything that exists is double. Man is a dual creation with co-creative principles warring against each other. And I mean, I really do believe that. I believe that I create an idea that I want something, and then immediately my human mind creates all the barriers that could cause it not to happen. How do we stop this? It's embedded in our human nature. Humanity is basically the human mind is the ego that's fighting against God. And we have to decide if we want to fight against God or be with God or acting as God here on this earth. So the never-ending struggle of the younger self who lives in his perfect imagination. And I think about a child. Jesus always said, become like the child. When we're children, we think big because we don't think of the obstacles that face us. And I remember when I was auditioning for colleges, my first choice was Juilliard, and the second choice was Carnegie Mellon. I didn't know that only 10 people got picked every year. And out of those 10 people, very few people were just right out of high school. I didn't know. I just did it. And I got into Carnegie Mellon, and I was trying to get into the musical theater program, but I guess I wasn't specific enough in my mind. So I sang, acted, and danced, and I actually sang for the music director who asked me if I would come and be in their singing program instead of in the musical theater program. And again, my mind was just open to the possibility of whatever it is that I wanted in life and to go for it. And so I went. So the child mind thinks big. It's the older mind that starts to think about all the good things that we could have, but all the obstacles that come before it. And I'll tell you some of the obstacles that I think of. I think of being exhausted, that I don't have enough energy to get out there and push my books. I don't want to push anything on anybody. And it almost seems in this world that to succeed in it, you have to be so ego-driven that you go out and you don't really care if people don't like you or if you're pushy. You just keep doing it until you get what you want. That's never been my intent. So living in a world in an external world where that's what you almost need to be successful, it was very difficult for me. So energy was one of the things. Secondly, I guess I never really thought I was good enough. I was sufficiently good, but not good enough. So what I did was I kept testing myself in my mind. I would spend my time dreaming of scenarios where I was tested by spirit. But really I was testing myself to see if I was good enough. I put myself in the most precarious situations and allow those situations to play out and see if I would choose God, or see if I would choose love, or see if I would choose compassion. as I look back in my life, and all of those tests I did, but it didn't seem to be enough because I keep choosing the tests in my mind. I keep seeing the tests in my mind. And what happens when I use my mind to create tests for myself? I don't use my mind, or I don't use my imagination to create the purposeful life that I really want. So I had to decide that the tests were finished, that I was love, that I am love, that I don't need to continue to test myself. I created something in hypnosis called the zeroing out technique. And I used it, and this is how I used it. So say I had a thought that I wanted to edit, or an imagination that I wanted to edit. Say I saw myself in a precarious situation where I was choosing ego instead of choosing love. I would close my eyes and tap my forehead and say to myself, I am enough. I don't need to test myself anymore. God loves me just as I am. And then I open my eyes and open and close my eyes and look at the finger 1. Then take 2 fingers, close my eyes again, and I tap my eye above my eye and below my cheekbones. You're always tapping bone. And this time, as I say my truth, I also want to envision myself having already chosen the good. So I say, I don't need to test myself anymore because I've chosen good each time. I choose good. I don't need to test myself anymore. And then I open and close my eyes and I look at the 2 fingers. Then I hold up 5 fingers and I tap my shoulder and I think about someone in my life who believes in me as much as I need to believe in myself. I can think of my husband, David. I could think of the spirit of my mom, who loved me unconditionally. I can think of my sister, Lori, who loves me unconditionally. And I have many friends who probably think way more of me than I believe that they do. And I think that as I'm tapping, and then I open and close my eyes with 5. Then I take 3 fingers. And this is all in my book, Zeroing Out, The Secret Steps to the Meditative Mind. I tap my chin now with my eyes closed. And I think about speaking aloud my truth. Because the word is the active conscious. It's love in action. Our words are love in action. And we have to produce love in action to create from our subjective mind, from the feminine aspects of our being, to birth good. So I want to change whatever it is I'm saying out loud. And that might be, well, I am trying to create a productive book career. And instead of saying trying, I'm saying, I am a successful writer who sells many books. Do you see the difference? And then I take a picture of 3 with my eyes. Then 4, I think of something very specific that I want to cut away from my life. And I do this with my eyes closed as well. I might want to see the last specific thing that was stuck in my mind that I thought I went over and over. Why did that person leave me? Why did that person treat me like that? And I cut it with my hands like this, bone on bone, like I'm cutting away at and tearing it apart and letting it shred on the floor. And I do that until I see externally in my mind that I've cut it away completely, shredded it. And then I take a picture of 4 with my eyes. And the last thing that I do is I tap my heart. And I tap my heart, and when I tap my heart, this is what I say. And you can figure out anything else you want to say, but I believe the Christ consciousness is that mental part of ourselves that is always forgiving. Forgiving of self and forgiving of everyone. That is love in action. So I say, with the power of the Christ in me, I can do all things. With the power of the Christ in me, I can do all things, as I tap my heart or my chest. And then this time, instead of opening and closing my eyes, I look at my fist, which represents 0, as in zeroing out, and I say the word out loud, power. Power. And all of this changes the duality in my mind. It takes what I've been thinking inwardly and fighting with, and it brings it more to the positive side of my mind. And that's the objective. We want to stay in the more positive part of our mind, and the more the higher densities of vibration, so that we create more in the higher densities. The higher densities of vibrations are what we're creating in our lives. Unfortunately, sometimes what happens is we are thinking about negativity too long. And those thoughts, those active thoughts, go into the subconscious. Negative goes into the subconscious where it's birthed. And then we rebirth what we don't want. For me, going back to that, what we were talking about before, I kept rebirthing the tests of me being not good enough. Every time I gave myself a test and I thought about the test and I thought, am I good enough? That was an active thought. And active thoughts are conscious, and they go into the subconscious mind where they're birthed. The birthing place, the subconscious mind, is like the earth. Whatever you plant in it is going to grow. So if I plant weeds, which are my old thoughts, weeds are going to come up. And I'm going to continue to be faced with weeds. What can you do, though, when you're a gardener? You can look at those weeds and you can pull them out. You got to get them out by the root, right? Because the weeds will come back if you don't. And then what do? After you take out all the weeds, you decide, oh, I want zinnias. Not just zinnias, but I want pink zinnias. And I plant a seed there. I want marigold. Or you like vegetables. I want cucumbers. I want lettuce. I want you to think about that garden that you want today. I want you to think about what it is that you want to plant in that subjective consciousness that's always going to grow exactly what you plant. Okay? So, and remember too that you want to plant things that not only come up immediately, but things that might take a little bit longer to bear fruit. Like, say for instance, I plant lettuce and an apple tree and some kind of bulb, like an iris that might take 2 or 3 years to come up, or 2 or 3 years to bloom. It will come up usually in the first year, but if it's a new bulb, it might take 2 or 3 years to bloom. And then the apple tree might take 5 to 10 years to produce a good crop. So we want in our garden of things that in our lives, things that will produce something quickly, produce something in a year, and produce something 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road. Those are the things that we're looking at. And we want to take out all the obstacles that are going to keep that from growing. We don't want to water it too much. We want to protect it as it's growing. We want to give the roots room to grow deep into the earth. We want to provide enough light so that the leaves grow and the flowers grow up towards the heavens. That's the way dreams are created in our lives. And we got to continue to do that in a productive way to create positivity in our lives. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lead us in a meditation that's about that kind of life. That it's about gardening our thoughts, gardening our loving dreams, and creating what we hope to manifest in the future, what we hope to create as a loving, powerful future. So I want you to find a place in your room or wherever you're sitting, and I want you to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and record this. So if you want a recording of just what I'm speaking, instead of the whole recording with me, which you can find on Facebook, what I want you to do is I want you to maybe listen to this more than one time. Ask me for it in an email. You can always get my email on Facebook.
I can't believe how much zeroing out has helped me reduce stress. You've got to try it.
Hi, I'm Michelle Prentice, and I wanted to give a testimonial about the new book by Bo Sebastian called Zeroing Out, Stopping Stress in 3 Minutes. Okay, so I've read a lot of books about stress relief and hypnosis and things like that, having to do with the mind. And what I loved about this book, I got it on Audible, and I loved his voice on it. I love when the author reads the book, and Bo has a beautiful voice, so that was really nice to listen to. But also, he was very, very clear on how the brain works and why we're doing what we're doing, and then also how to do it. And he has videos about it too, which I love that it's such a step above any other book I've ever seen about this topic. And it's such a simple technique, and I'm able to do it by myself, which I love. So I highly recommend it. You should try it out, listen to it or read it. I think you will not be disappointed.
I highly recommend Zeroing Out by Bo Sebastian. It's been very helpful for me, and it's helped me navigate through difficult times. It's just a great book. Everyone should get it.
Work can get stressful for me at times, but zeroing out has really managed the way I can view my schedule and my time. And now I can leave my work at work, and I can spend more time with the people that I love.
Life gets hectic, and sometimes I just don't take the time to clear my mind, especially right after work. The zeroing out method helps me to leave my work at work, so I have a clear mind for the people at home I love.
Life can get really busy taking care of my home, 2 careers, and my family, when your mind can't seem to get quiet to rest. That's when you need to use zeroing out.